All right, everyone. The red box is on. I'm looking inside that box. It states we are, in fact, live. And thank you all for being here. This gentleman has given us so much joy, so much to think about in terms of the creative process. And we're going to get into that. And I'm going to put him on the spot as if he needs one. But, sir, would you mind formally introducing yourself to maybe the three people who have no idea who you might be?
My name is Pat Metheny. I'm a musician and very happy to be here with y'all today.
And thank you, sir. And you know what? Just a little background. He picked up the trumpet at age 8, but thankfully the guitar called out to him by age 12. At age 15, he was working with the best jazz musicians in Kansas City, a city, as you know, renowned for its rich jazz heritage. And by 74, hard to believe, some 50 plus years ago, our guest broke open under the international jazz scene. Today, his versatility on guitars is practically without peer. He's worked with so many greats. He's an established music educator giving back. He was the youngest teacher ever at the University of Miami at 18. At 19, he became the youngest teacher ever at the Berklee College of Music. And some 20 years later, even received an honorary doctorate. Now, as a music pioneer, he was one of the first jazz musicians to treat the synthesizer as a serious musical instrument. He's also instrumental in development of several types of guitars, including the soprano acoustic, which I think we talked about the last time he was on, the 42-string Picasso, and a host of other custom instruments. He holds 3 gold RIAA albums. He's in the Downbeat Hall of Fame, an NEA Jazz Master, the nation's highest honor in jazz, and he spent much of his life touring, often performing over 200 shows. The last tour, as I understand it, over 200 dates. A legendary American guitarist, composer, improviser, is also the 20-time Grammy winner. That's right, 20 times, the only artist, as I understand, to win in 10 different categories. And he is back. Pat Metheny is back after that wonderful release, Moondial. We're here to celebrate the forthcoming brilliant new album, Side-Eye 3 Plus. Enough for me. I'm Steve Harkins, and I'm with Talk Shop Live, your host. Please welcome back Talk Shop Live's legendary guitarist, composer, and performer, Pat Metheny. Pat, thank you once again for being here today.
Man, thank you for that intro. What a thing. So I'm very happy to be with you.
Thank you. And where do we find you today?
I'm in upstate New York.
Nice. And with that, everyone, I just want to say, if you if you have any interest in chatting with fans, we have the chat function, so feel free to do so. We'll also get back to a few of you. First of all, let me state, Pat, if you were to consider running for office, which is probably, you're like a Renaissance man. It's the only thing you don't have on your resume, man, you would get my vote. Man, I appreciate your vision and your line of thinking. But I want to say that while you're often lumped in as a form of entertainment and entertainer, which is certainly true, what you do is extraordinarily important, especially in today's climate. You bring people together through your message and music and art. And I just, want to say thank you for what you do. We need Pat Metheny now more than ever.
That's very nice of you to say. I mean, I feel so lucky to be a musician, in kind of, any time, but it is a kind of weird time right now, no question. And there's something I've been kind of thinking about a lot, and I've kind of said this to a few musicians too. It's like, the B flat that I'm going to play today was a B flat a million years ago, and it's going to be a B flat a million years from now. And I just feel so lucky to live in a world where I'm trading in a currency of something that's just true. It's fundamentally true. That is a B flat. And, stuff goes up and down, things change. There's a lot of stuff in the various cultures that have impact for sure, even on musicians. But the thing about music, it's very unusual. I mean, what is it? I mean, you can't see it, touch it, you can't smell it, but you walk into a room and there's something happening in on the bandstand. Nobody can miss that, and
Right.
It's really something that stands outside of really anything else in our human platform here. And
Yeah.
I feel like a, just an incredible privilege to be a musician and to be able to have spent my life kind of devoted to trying to learn and understand music. So it's been great.
Yeah, I refer to as magical music, medicine that today particularly, and as I said, you touched on it. You set foot on stage, it doesn't matter. You can have a mixed bag in terms of religious convictions, political affiliations, and what you do is unifies people together, and without any effort on our part, I mean, it's just this response, as you said, is somewhat mystical and magical, and, and as I said, I think it's probably the one common thread that we have today now. Congratulations on this brilliant new record, Side Eye 3 Plus. I'm assuming, and I don't think it's much of a leap that you feel really good about the final outcome of this project.
I do. And, I mean, every musician says that their most recent record is their best record. I mean, that's like cliche number one, but
Right.
this is maybe my best record. No, it's a really, it's a really good one, I think. And, you know, the thing about making records and having done a lot of them over the years, it's a little bit like, they say with like a movie or something, it's the script has to be there, and it's like if the story and the script is not right, it doesn't matter what you do. And it's, for me, the tunes have to be there, and not just the tunes in my case, but the whole map of how the tunes might exist as a platform for improvising, and then also the band and the guys, and all of those things for me on this record are like 100%. And
Yeah.
you always hope for the best, but I mean this one, I can really say, I mean, there's a couple tracks on there that for me are, that's it. That's what I really hope to one day be able to communicate. So that's a good feeling right there.
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, there definitely were some tracks that you just go, "Boy, this will stand the test of time." It's just, it really connects, and interesting that, you're committed to the trio format, but on this particular project, you decided to, expand, I think, with probably another 15 additional musicians that you used throughout the recording, and it sounded like the material kinda lent itself to you expanding that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, this is the second time now that's happened where I've had this band that was this great band where we played millions of concerts together. And then I wrote a bunch of music for that band, for those people, and then discovered in the process of putting it together that that was what the core of it was, but the music was sort of leaning to something else. The other record I'm talking about is From This Place, where I had this quartet with Antonio Sanchez, Linda O, and Willem Simcock, and we did, I don't know, 300 concerts around the world, and it was this great band, and I wrote all this stuff, and then it was like, this needs more. It needs an orchestra, and that's what he ended up doing. In the case of this record, this core band of Joe and Chris Fishman, Joe Dyson and Chris Fishman, and I think we've probably done about 200 concerts around the
Yeah.
world. It's a fantastic trio, and wrote all this stuff for those guys. And then, as started to rehearse and put it together, it's like, wait a minute, this is that, but it's also some other stuff. And I've always been very comfortable taking leaps, like whatever my sensibility or imagination seems to be, asking for when I wake up in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm really getting an indication of something. I always trust it. And in this case,
Yeah.
it led me to a place that I would have been the last person to think that it would wind up being exactly like this. But man, it came out really just right.
You touched on this, and we may have talked about it last time, but I'm always fascinated by the songwriting process, in terms of, the germ of the idea, as you mentioned. I refer to as you being like a vessel where, somehow you get something, just pops in your head. It could be, it could be a melody line, it could be a riff, could be a rhythm, whatever the case may be. Is that the primary mode of the seeds are planted, or are there moments where Pat Metheny sits down and goes, "Okay, I'm going to try to knock out something and just kind of see what comes out," kind of a workshop attitude, or is it a combination of both of those?
Well, the most common answer I hear from other musicians when asked this question is what I would probably say too, which is it's never exactly the same and it's never quite what you would think. Um, I will say that in my case, I once had a conversation with the great baseball player Bernie Williams. I'm a great fan of the Yankees, and
Yeah,
Bernie in particular is also a great musician. And he said something to me where, like, to the effect of, like, people think I'm a really good hitter because my lifetime average is right around 300. But that means that I was out 7 times. And
right.
then I realized, kind of in my case, in terms of writing music, it's about the same, actually a little less, which
Yeah,
is to get 2 tunes, I have to write 10 tunes. And I'm really brutal about it because it's kind of pragmatic for me. It's not that the other 8 are bad, it's
yeah,
that, okay, I'm going to have to play this 200 nights in a row. Do I really like it that much? Or will I really be able to find new stuff in that tune 200 times? And that's a big ask of a tune.
right.
There's lots of tunes I have that might be good for something else. I've got folders full of decent tunes, but for it to make it onto a record, something I'm going to play live, it's a pretty high bar for me to get to that. And actually, it gets much higher every year because my sense of what's okay gets more and more high, I guess.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm just curious. I imagine that it really depends as to when you determine that this is maybe the 7 out of 10 or whatever that ratio ends up being that really is going to make the cut. I imagine some of that is as you're starting to construct a song, and there may be times where you go through the whole recording process and you're like, "Oh, I'm just not feeling this," or
No, I wouldn't let it get that far. I'll
that's
tell you
good to hear.
I'll tell you exactly what I do, and it drives people in my family crazy. If I
Yeah,
think a tune is a possible worthy tune, I set it up on a loop and
yeah,
play it for about 4 hours straight. And if at
yeah,
the end of the 4 I'm not the whole thing, but the basic tune. If at the end of the 4 hours, I'm still, like, finding things to do with it inside the chords and all that, then I think, okay, this might make it. But very few of them last more than even 15 or 20 minutes, because it's like, okay, you know, it could be that it's just uncomfortable to improvise on, or it's kind of
right.
just awkward some way or another. And then maybe, okay, maybe there's something I can do. But usually it's usually I let the tune kind of tell me what its deal is. And
Uh,
and it's usually not too hard to find the ones that are like this one. Oh yeah, that's going to be good. It's just that, back to your original question, they may emerge in wildly different ways. I mean, I definitely have had it happen very quickly, where it's
right.
like, this is the whole tune. And then I have many other tunes where I've been working on them for 20 years. And it's like that is, the DNA of the tune is there in that first 4 bars. But, and I hear a lot of music, like even some classical music, where it's like, man, the guy had it so the first bit so good, but that next party, it wasn't actually the best possible answer to that.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, again, it's kind of a pragmatic thing because I'm going to have to play them a lot, because I tour a lot. So I want to make sure I really like it.
Incredibly thoughtful process, and you have to be a patient individual, I think, to do that. But I'm sure the musicians involved with the project, including the other two in the trio, are thankful. Okay, we're going to bat with this one. Which, by the way, spring training is only in a day or two, so there
Right.
is hope. There is hope for the future, Pat.
That's right.
Yeah, and good luck to the Yankees. I'm from
I
Chicago. We have a history of losing.
Well, the Cubs, they've kind of the White Sox. Yeah,
Once,
it's been, but
yeah,
I'm from
brutal. Yeah, yeah. The Cubs.
when it comes to the Royals, and I mean, there were a couple moments there, but
That's
you
right.
know,
That's right. I have to ask you on the production and the arranging side of it too. also fascinating. You know, you're talking about songwriting, and again, it's a bit of a mystery. I mean, if you try to again write a book about how to write songs, I mean, there's some craftsmen, you know, not so much in the jazz vein, you know, that have a formula, but how we respond to songs, as you said too, is a bit magical and mystical. But from the production arrangement standpoint, do you go into, since you're dealing with, you know, just incredibly proficient musicians, do you have like a really clear vision on exactly how you want the parts played, or do you give them a basic outline of what you're looking for and kind of let them run with it, or again, is it a combination of those things?
Well, I would say it varies a lot depending upon kind of what story you want to tell. I mean, and
Yeah,
also I would say that, I'm reluctant always to divide my thing into different parts because to me it is one big long thing from the beginning. But I do think that there are pretty clearly some records that are like documentary records where you get some guys, you play the tunes a few times and pick the best one, and that's that. And then there are
yeah,
these other ones that I kind of jokingly call my Steven Spielberg IMAX type records, of
yeah,
which there's a few of those. And then there's, a couple, which this would be one, the one I mentioned before, with Antonio and Linda and Willem, that are really hybrid because they're both. And
right,
because it's such a working band, that we played together so much, we could just play the tunes. And so it wasn't
right,
like teaching somebody something. And so, for me, the whole thing, the process from writing the music to recording it, and I do all of the other stuff, all the editing and everything else. I don't do the actual mixing because that you really need somebody who can do that. Only
right,
focused on that to do that. But everything else for me is kind of part of the whole thing. And regarding my status as a band leader, I think you could
yeah,
probably gather from almost anybody who's ever been in one of my bands that I'm kind of like a benevolent dictator. I mean, I'm nice about it, but you know, because I write, I've 90% of all the stuff that I've ever played, really.
yeah,
Um, I have, strong ideas like, okay, it should be like this, and at letter B you should go to that symbol, and at letter C you should, stuff
yeah,
like that, which I will indicate sometimes even on the music. And on the other hand, there's a point once people have absorbed it where actually the job description and why I hire them in the first place is to make it their own and do
right,
their thing with that. And it's a very odd combination of things that are involved for in this kind of improvising in particular, where it's sort of there's a functional component to it. I mean, the analogy I always say when somebody new comes into the band is that each tune has a very specific world, and
right,
you kind of have to stay in that world. And I mean, the way I describe it, it's sort of like, okay, this tune is about green beans. You can
mm,
say anything you want, but you got to talk about green beans. It can be green beans from outer space tonight. It could be your mom's green beans tomorrow, but you can't talk about Brussels sprouts. You have to talk about
yeah,
green beans on that one.
right,
And then this one is concrete. Say something about concrete, but you got to make up a new story about concrete. You can't talk about linoleum. It has to, each tune has got
yeah,
a thing, and you got to stay in it. And it's really a unique discipline for improvisers, to have that. And of course, whether people describe it that way or even think about it that way, every improvising musician has a language, has a vocabulary, has a world that they live in. And I mean, there is a certain mythology about improvising that, oh, they make up completely new stuff every single time. Man, you would hear John Coltrane 6 sets a night and then hear him the next night. You would recognize that they played the same tunes, and he kind of had a way that he was going to address the tune, whether it's the Art Ensemble Chicago or whoever. I mean, we all
right,
have kind of a world that we live in, but it's not so much a matter of this, it's more a matter of that, because it's not so much the what, it's the how and the why that ultimately comes out. But the language that we're dealing with is very complex. And, my thing in particular involves a lot of harmony. You got to really understand how to play on changes, like to the point that they just disappear.
Right.
And, that's a whole other topic that must be there for it to do what it's supposed to do in order to get to the green bean Brussels sprout
Yeah.
part of the equation.
I I really appreciate that background. Quite an education. It's fascinating, and I imagine Chris and Joe, because of the time they spent now, know stick to the vegetable. You can't just veer off into the food group.
Well, I would say that, I mean, pretty much everybody I've ever hired, that's going to function, as a kind of improvising force in the music. They would already be there. It's
Yeah.
like, the kinds of things that come up. I mean, and it is an interesting moment for me now that I'm like, at the age I'm at, is that when I first started my bands and stuff, I had to explain everything. I mean,
Right.
because it wasn't really, it was kind of a new thing. There were many aspects about it that were just kind of not like anything. And now, I mean, it's not just one generation, it's two, maybe even three generations of people who have grown up listening to those records, and I barely have to say anything. They kind of just know
Yeah.
what to do. And that's kind of an interesting phenomenon for me because I was a guy who would talk for hours about, like, okay, why this should happen or that should happen, and a lot of those kinds of things now are just kind of absorbed into the vocabulary of it. So pretty cool.
That's great. It is pretty cool. I'll tell you what else is pretty cool, because I know you're a guy who has a lot of free time on his hands between all the touring that you're the recording and your family, to say the least. That you have launched your own label, Uniquity Music. So congratulations on that. And I I must ask, Pat, how does it feel now to report to yourself?
Well,
And
just to clarify
yeah,
that little, I kind of started my own thing in 1985 when I left ECM. I was very fortunate to have some people that I still work with. I've worked with Ted Curlin, my guy manager dude, for 50 odd years now. Somehow Ted
amazing.
was able to convince people when I left ECM that I should own all my own stuff and I will license it to people. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So I've really kind of had my own thing since then, and I've never really had to answer to anybody. I've, taken suggestions from this person or that person. And I don't mind rubbing shoulders with somebody who might have some ideas. But basically, at the point of Song X, that was the first record. From then till now, everything I've done has been Metheny Group Productions, is what I called it at that time, which is now this other thing. And what's cool about this is that it'll all be in one place. All of that stuff, some of it was over here, some of it was there. When you do a licensing kind of thing, there is a point it all gets reverts to you. So that's this moment. Plus, I was able to make
Yeah.
an incredible connection with some people who will handle that. But all of everything I do from now on will also be in that same place. And that's what this Uniquity thing is. And it's very exciting for me to just kind of have it all organized now under one place instead of all over the place. So that's the thing. In terms of, you know, answering to anybody, man, even when from the very beginning, I've always been a kind of person who really pretty I kind of know what I want to do, and
No
it's
doubt.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you know what? And how fortuitous too that you had that vision early on. The importance of controlling your own music. There's so many musicians, songwriters, that are just upset and frustrated that they either didn't have the guidance or the vision to do that. So
I
kudos to
so
you.
I did not have the vision. All I was thinking about was, the thing. And I was very fortunate that my main hero, the guy whose band I always wanted to play in, and then I got to start playing with him when I was 18, was Gary Burton.
Yeah.
Incredibly astute person in every way, including this area.
Yeah.
And Gary had established a relationship with Ted Kurland in Boston, who was also not much older than me. And that was just pure, I was just lucky to be around both of them, because believe me, I was not seeing it at that point. I was seeing like, just really, when I started playing with Gary, I'd only been playing for 4 or 5 years. When I made Bright Size Life, I think had only been playing for 5 years. So, I was still, and I'm still trying to get it together. But at that point, I was really
Yeah.
just working on music, like trying to, I had to play after Gary Burton, he would play these like, and Steve Swallow, they would, these are like two of the giants of music. And then I had to,
Absolutely.
so I had enough to keep my sense on that. But yeah, those guys, both Gary and Ted, have been amazing, and really I owe anything like that to those guys.
We got some fan questions that we picked out. One is from Andy. He wants to know, do you still listen to music outside of your own? Like, quite often musicians, once you put something out, you're not going to spend a lot of time because you lived with your own projects. But do you go back to your old go-tos and also other newer projects, newer artists that you listen to from time to time?
I have had a really interesting recent thing happen, which is,
Uh-huh.
so I'm one of those people, like if I walk into a room and somebody has one of my records on, I'm going to leave, because it's like, by the time you write the music and then all the things we've talked about, and then you edit it and then you mix it, it's like, and I do listen to the records just constantly right up to the day they're released. And once they're released, I don't ever seem to want to hear it again. And it's not even intentional. It's just kind of a thing that happens. So really my connection to hearing myself has been making records and then hearing the records back and then eventually not wanting to hear them again.
Right.
And also people sometimes would get, hey, here, I have a tape of you from your concert and such and such. And I'm like, man, I don't ever want to hear that, no.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of ways, I really have never actually listened to myself. It's a strange thing to say. So in the lead up to this side eye period, there's so many interesting, great new musicians around in New York. And I have a place where I can play. And starting about 7 or 8 years ago, I started inviting musicians who I had heard or that I knew of up to the place, and we would play like 4 or 5 tunes. And I would say, is it okay if I record them? And most people, all of them would say, sure. So I recorded, hours and hours of, it's mostly me with drummers,
Right.
just guitar, drums, and sometimes a bass player, sometimes a piano player, but I have all these hours of, not thinking about it, like playing, I would always play like Autumn Leaves and play one Bright Size Life and maybe a blues and a ballad or something with everybody, just to kind of get a sense of how it would feel. And then I had all these recordings and I started listening to them. And it was the first time, this is recent, where I kind of like went, oh, that's what I actually sound like. And it was really interesting. It's like, okay, okay.
Amazing.
Now I can sort of say
You finally heard yourself.
because there's
That's
also
incredible.
a thing, if you play like you do a jam session or something, and then you listen to it an hour or two later, you kind of remember what you played. But
Right.
if you don't listen to it for like 2 years, and I hear this stuff and I'm like, who is that? It's like,
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm about to play. And that's what, of course, the job description is and what I've been doing for 55 years. But somehow I had never really encountered it like that. And so it's been really interesting. And the answer to your question is, that's mostly what I listen to now are those, audition tapes.
I love
And
that.
yeah, it's really been, I mean, because I've got hours and hours of them. And, it's a completely different perspective that I have now on the whole thing. And it's kind of cool that it happened.
Well, not my call, but, thinking of all the, miles that you've logged doing this, it's probably about time you heard yourself, Pat.
Well, I've really worked hard to avoid it. So,
Yeah.
when I'm glad that when it finally did come up, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's
Yeah, you got a favorable response.
yeah,
Cindy would like to know, how do you balance, um, life? I mean, you're prolific in your recordings, you tour significantly in terms of the amount of dates once you hit the road, and you have a family and with kids, and, it's not like somebody handed you a manual, just like, when you started your own label or you were licensing or you received the licensing rights to your own music. How do you navigate through all of that?
it's been a challenge, and I'm very lucky. I've got my wife Latifah is awesome. We've been together
Yeah,
30 years now, and the kids are great. Um, you know, it's I think everybody that is a musician that is going to do tours and all that. It's a challenge because my default would be I would just stay home because I like just nothing. I mean, um, but two things. One is I've got three kids, and they're all going to go to college, and we've got a mortgage and all that stuff. So I mean,
yeah,
it's how I've been able to make a living. Um, and then there's another part of it, which is I just feel so privileged to get the chance to play. And um,
right,
I can't. I would feel bad missing the opportunities that are provided where I can be a musician. And and also now at this point give a platform to other musicians too, which I've also been able to do over the years as a band leader. And it's kind of weird now that it's like there's not as many of us left now that are going to hire younger people, and I was the beneficiary of that, as we all have been.
that's right.
And so it's kind of part of the thing of keeping it all going, because you can sit in your room and you can practice and you can do all kinds of stuff. But, it's the thing of being on the bandstand with people who have done it a lot. There's no substitute for that. And I can always hear it when I hear a young dude who has only played with other young, you know, musicians, because it's
Right,
just not the same.
that's
And
right.
so that's part of it. But I mean, it's challenging, no question. And I'm I can't say I have hit it out of the park in that department. Sometimes I think I get the balance better some years than others. But yeah, it's a challenge, no question.
Well, look, Pat, I mean, it's kudos to your wife and your family. I'm sure when you hit the road, the kids are going, "Oh, great. Now I don't have to listen to, dad's new music 4 hours straight," even though we know he's brilliant.
It's interesting though in that.
I'm just
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, I mean the relationship that everyone has to whatever my musical thing is, except for my wife Latifah. She knows a lot about it. But I'm going to say they're not that in it, not in a bad way, but I just think they've got their own lives and they've always had their own things going on. One of my middle kid was in my crew for a year, which was fantastic. We had a great
I
time.
bet.
And now
Yeah,
he's doing really well as a chef at a great restaurant in Brooklyn, which is what he really wanted to do. And
it's
the
fantastic.
oldest boy's a film guy. He's had the chance to work on a bunch of cool things, and my daughter's just now graduating from high school in the next year or so. So yeah, it's like
Yeah,
that.
incredible. To himself again, but I have to say, I'm not that sorry. I mean, what a wonderful opening piece, great energy, incredible musicianship displayed here, great guitar, riffs in there, and some adventurous breaks as well. This is predominantly the trio, is it not, Pat?
Yeah. Although the original concept of the side-eye thing for me was that, I played a lot in organ trio stuff in Kansas City, meaning
Yep.
what that means for people who aren't familiar. It's like it's a B3 where the organ player is going to either with his feet or left hand be the bass player also. And then usually almost always a guitar player and a drummer. And my
Mhm.
idea was, well, couldn't we take that idea into the 21st century where it didn't have to be a B3? It could be, you know, all kinds of other stuff. There's all kinds of different keyboard type things you can do now. And Chris is
Yeah.
like the perfect guy for that. Besides the fact that Chris has incredible bass player instincts. Chris is really a drummer, which is really kind of amazing.
That is
And he
amazing.
plays like a drummer, and that's one of the things I love about the way he plays. But anyway, so that was the idea, and then as kind of this music evolved, I was like, man, it actually would be good to have a bass player, so that Chris could focus on other stuff. And Chris is equally a piano player as much as he's anything else. And there's a great bass player who happens to be one of Chris's best friends, Daryl Johns. And
Mm.
I've known Daryl since he was like 13, and he's just an incredibly talented person. And we thought, well, let's get Daryl. And Daryl came in and did an incredible job. And that was sort of the beginning of the, like, well, if we're going to get Daryl, then maybe and then the next thing we knew, all of a sudden you hear percussion, you hear some singing in there, and all of those things kind of emerged as like, oh, that's what this is. That's what
Yeah.
this thing is. But the core of it is, me, Chris, and Joe there. But there is, bass now. So
Thanks for clarifying that for sure. Great opening track. Let's check out another one from Pat's forthcoming new album, Side Eye 3 Plus. Here's Don't Look Down. Once again, Brendan, if you would please roll the digital. This is the part, Pat, where the fans get really upset with me and they say, Steve, how could you cut off such an amazing track? And this is where I say, if you've been on Talk Shop Live, you need to buy the album to hear the rest of it. And trust me, it only gets better. And I'll tell you how you can do that. But this is such a gorgeous track and a detour, from the opening track. Love this one. To me, it centered me when I listened to it. Just beautiful. And music we need today more than ever, that oral landscape and great dynamics. And also love the arrangement near the end with the vocals as well, which people will hear when they purchase it.
yeah, that track is really that's a really special track for me, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Because, and again, I mean, the part that we've heard is sort of the gives you the sort of the basics, but this is I think it's a 10 or 11-minute track.
It's over 11 minutes. Yeah.
And it really, I mean, it really does a thing. It really does a thing. And also I got to say, Joe Dyson, man, that is some hardcore great drumming there, and it's that way all the way through.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I mean, Joe's from New Orleans, I'm from Kansas City, and there's a certain kind of playing that I've never really gotten to do in a way that I can do with Joe. It's what I kind of grew up doing, and I mean, you can hear it there.
Right.
And I've played a lot with heavy guys, heavy drummers. I mean, the greatest of them all, Jack DeJohnette, Roy Haynes, Billy Higgins. And, there's a certain thing that comes with all of those type of, like sort of iconic drummers where you're, of course, going to play in their yard in a way. And
right.
I love that. I love getting the opportunity to do that. But with Joe, I mean, I didn't feel like anything other than like, we're just going to play. And we're just kind of like able to do whatever that is without even really thinking about it. And and the first time I played with Joe was like that. He's one of the guys that when he first came to my house, that's one of the things I listened to over and over again was that him and I playing like Autumn Leaves or something like for 40 minutes.
Incredible. That must have been incredible. And that has to be fulfilling for you, right? I mean, that you kinda can revisit this kind of a vibe and that kind of a feel.
Well, again, all of this music was written, thinking of, this kind of a band and with these
Yeah.
kinds of players and, younger dudes. And, you know, I mean, it's funny. I said this to somebody the other day. It's not too hard for me to find younger musicians now because pretty much everybody is younger than me now.
Oh,
So, except for Ron Carter and Herbie, it's like,
y
um,
you're carrying the torch.
and
Keep passing
so
it.
but I mean, that was sort of a big part of what creating this platform was to, be able to bring, people in that I had heard and that I admired. And man, Chris and Joe are the top of the list for me. So.
Yeah, and speaking of top of the list, this album, Pat Metheny's really delivered. A forthcoming release entitled Side Eye 3, setting musically wonderful groove and vibe here. Um, and it kind of opens up a bit and noted after about 6 minutes or so, and then kind of pulls it back down. And I kind of love that musical journey for this particular track and a wonderful ending. I love how, on this record, there's some, you kind of take us to a little bit, it's like either elevate or take us to a little bit of a different place to close out the song quite often on this album.
Well, for me, this again, the sort of narrative storytelling aspect of what music is kind of has to be there for me in one way or another. And I think it can show up in infinite ways. It has something to do with sort of this idea of unfolding ideas, and like, I mean, for instance, I mean, Cecil Taylor was an extremely avant-garde piano player, but to me that's exactly what I'm talking about too. It's not like, oh well, it's just this logical, like you go da 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 and then you go da da da. No, it could be that, but it
Right.
could be any kind of thing. It's something about how things flow together. And one thing about this tune, the one you're about to play, is that there are many ways you can go to school in millions of colleges now, and you can study harmony, and it's been broken down and like to the most extreme levels of why this chord, why that chord, use these notes on that chord. There's a lot of music theory type stuff that has really been nailed down much more than it was even when I was starting out. And then, rhythm is another thing where you can study metric modulations and all kinds of cool stuff that's evolved in the world of drumming. The X factor in music remains melody. And
Yep.
the thing about melody is that it's I mean, there's no way you can break it down. I mean, yeah, you can say, okay, it's these kind of intervals create a lyrical feeling or blah blah, but it doesn't mean you're going to remember it. And
Right.
this tune for me is a tune like it came quickly and it was sort of like, well, that's it. That's how it goes. And it just sort of did what it had to do. And that's nice when that happens as opposed to it being really a project, like, okay, I'm gonna have to figure it was just like, this is it. And it just said, yeah, I'm here. I'm here. I'm the tune. And I
Love that
always go,
explanation. Yeah, and actually, some of the music we're not allowed to play yet just because it hasn't been formally released, but I did wanna touch on, the other tracks, just, some commentary, and feel free to chime in, but Urban and Western, this one was so soulful, and, love the build on the back end, with the choir-like vocals. This is one of my favorites from the album.
well, there was a point in this music where I had it. I had the tunes. I had even the arrangements in a lot of ways and was getting ready for, this was going to be the record. And then I just kept waking up literally in the middle of the night, like hearing this thing, and it involved singing. And it's,
Yeah.
singing is something that's been part of my thing now and then over the years. But this was a different kind of singing. And, I've had a couple pull off to the side of the road, like, I can't believe what I'm hearing moments over the
Yeah.
years. Not
Yeah.
many, couple. First time I heard Brad Meldau is one.
Is that right?
Um, Yeah, and then one of the other ones before that was somebody gave me a pre-release tape of the first Take Six record,
Oh,
and
yeah,
it
yeah,
was like, "What is this?" I
yeah.
mean, now it's one of those things a little bit like what Jocko was. It's like now, there's so much of that you can't most people can't remember that there wasn't that, and then there was that one day,
Yeah,
and
right.
six, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, now there's infinity groups like that. I mean, they have TV shows and stuff. But man, when those guys came along, that was like dropped from outer space or something. And
Absolutely.
so I've been a fan of theirs since then. Mark Kibble, is one of the main, um, featured people, and founder of that thing. And I've known them for years, and I've known Mark in particular because he does other things. And so I sent him some music, some really rough demos. I'm like, Mark, I'm hearing this thing. Am I crazy?
Yeah.
And he wrote back right away. He said, "Nope, you're not crazy." He said, "Let me help you with this." And he did. And kind of between the two of us, we figured out this sort of world where these on a couple tunes really like intersect, these two things. And it's pretty unique. I can't say I've heard much music that sounds quite like what that is, whatever it
I
is.
agree.
And it's been
But
great. It's been really fun.
feels natural, and it's definitely a standout. I just wanna, just briefly touch on, the remaining songs. CO is a spectacular piece, and then you have Our Old Street, so much warmth with this one. It's another one that really centered me, and, again, I think will connect with many people considering its somewhat chaotic atmosphere we kind of exist in now, and then there's Risk and Reward, which has kind of a Latin feel percussively. Really enjoyed that one. And I also want to center on that closing track. So far, so good. Perfect closing track. Magical approach, I thought, to the instrumentation and coloring. It's another one that's kind of soft. It's soft and subtle and soothing. And this one to me seemed like automatically the right one to close this great in this great project that you put together.
Yeah, I mean, a tune like So Far So Good. I mean, I wake up almost every day, and the first thing I do is write a tune kind of like that. I have, I don't know how many. And it's just my kind of natural default is to write ballads. It's like I love doing it, and there's like a million of them kind of sitting there and floating around. And that's just kind of a way that I get going. And,
Yep.
and I look in the folder every now and then. I mean, the whole record Dreambox is literally things from that folder. Um, and that track was sort of, or that tune was kind of in there. And that is one of the things that I had from before that I thought, well, that'll be great with this band. And then I expanded it quite a bit. I did sort
Yep.
of knowing what we were going to do with everybody and what it was. And that's often the case where I have kind of the tune and then I do the thing with the tune if it seems to want that.
Well, I'll tell you what, 2026, we've got, well, we're halfway through February, but you're about to embark on a fairly massive tour, which is again something else. We get to celebrate this great new record, and we get to experience Pat performing a lot of this material live. And so we're looking forward to that. And also, I wanted to thank all the fans for being here and for continuing to support this American music treasure that we had, known as known, of course, as Pat Metheny. I also want to thank a few people for helping pull all of this together. That includes Jordan Fritz, day in and day out, and as you heard Pat mention, Ted Kurlan and David Sholomson from the Kurlan Agency. Also, thanks to Blake's son, Blake Davis, who may change his last name to Sun because he works for the Sun Label Group, and also Green Hill Music, also Megan Wright, Melissa Chambers, and Melissa Miller, and Dominic Pandashia as well for his support at Primary Wave. Also, our fulfillment partners at AMP and Alliance Entertainment, to Brian, Sandy, Tina, Brad, Joe, Jenny, Lavani, Marty, Kate, Sam, and behind the scenes is always doing a terrific job. Brendan Quinn, all from Talk Shop Live, but most importantly to Pat Metheny for continuing to share his musical gifts with all of us. And I just want to tell everyone, pick up this brilliant new forthcoming album. You won't regret it top to bottom. It's a brilliant piece of work. And I know you'll agree with me. Side Eye 3 Plus, purchase it in Talk Shop Live, and while supplies last, you will receive it personally autographed by the man, the myth, the legend you see before you, Pat Metheny. And while you're at it, pick up copies for friends and family. Spread the gospel. We need this. Is music medicine that we need more than ever. The unique gift of Pat Metheny. Your friends and family will thank you for it. I have it on good authority. It will enhance everyone's quality of life. Pat, I know you've had such a massively busy schedule, man. It's such a joy and a privilege to have you on. Thank you for your time, and again for continuing to share great music with all of us.
Well, thank you, and what a pleasure to talk to you and to be able to be here and participate in this. And it's been really fun for me too. So thanks for inviting me and including me.
You bet. We can do it again and hope to see you on the road.
Hope so too.
All right. Wish